Hi all, welcome everyone to the second part of our Angry Bots video tutorial on Psi for Unity. Last time we integrated the general background music for our scene, and now it's time for adaptive battle music, again without any scripting, all done by drag and drop. So let's first take a look at the enemies that the player will encounter in the scene. The common ones are these little spider bots that will activate and close in on the player when spotted. So our first task will be to warn the player whenever she gets close to one of these bots. To achieve that, the first step is to select the bot, and I will create an empty game object as a child node again that will be responsible for that musical feature. Let's call it my battle music when near. And the trigger script we will be using this time is this one called psai trigger when in range. Now when I've dragged it onto my newly created game object, and we see we have quite a few options this time. The first one again is the theme ID. We choose theme 3, which is our danger theme, and it's of type action. This means that it will immediately interrupt any basic mood that might be playing in the background. Another parameter is the trigger radius, which defines the minimum distance to the player from which the script will start firing. Let's set it to around 15 meters. We also make sure that both the player collider and the local collider of the enemy object are assigned correctly. You can do so as usual just by drag and drop. So at this point I could already hit play, but this would result in the trigger just firing once at the point when the player stepped into the trigger range. So this is not what we want in this case. As long as the player is still within the range of the enemy object, we want Psi to keep up the tension, keep up the intensity, and this is why I checked the fire continuously checkbox here. This will result in Psi triggering in a regular interval, and this also gives me another option up here. I can scale the intensity by the distance to the player, which means that I can set a minimum value of the triggering intensity that will be valid as soon as the player has stepped within the trigger radius, up to a maximum intensity value that will be triggered with when the player stands directly in front of the enemy object. So in our case, the enemy spiders are not much of a threat, especially when they're far away. So I will choose a very low intensity value of, let's say, 15% when the player has just stepped in range, up to a maximum intensity value of, let's say, 60% when they've reached the player. And at last I also choose a rather short calm down time of 3 seconds so that the music calms down pretty quickly when we have stepped out of range. Now we're all set for our first test run. Let's check how it sounds so far. So while this sounded pretty okay, there's still some things that we could improve. For instance, there's no point to warn the player that a low-level enemy like this is around when the enemy has not yet awakened. And of course, one way to do this is just to deactivate the whole my battle music when detected game object node from within your game logic. However, if you don't want to touch your source code, there's also a very convenient way to do this, just by drag and drop by using the trigger conditions that can be found in the folder here. Trigger conditions are a way to further define the preconditions when a trigger should fire or not. So in our example, we only want the battle music to get triggered when the spider is in attack mode. And one way to check that is to see if its attack movement controller is enabled. It's called AI attack. So all we need to do is to tell psai to skip all the triggers as long as this component is disabled. And we do so just by dragging and dropping the trigger condition called skip if component is disabled onto our trigger when in range game node. And now we just link the component to check to the AI attack behavior, and we're all set. So let's rather rename the battle music node to my battle music when detected. Another thing that I would like the music to reflect is the fact that enemy spiders attacking in numbers are a much higher threat than a single enemy spider. And the way to achieve that is to make sure that all the battle music triggers of my enemy spiders shall get synchronized, and to select that their intensity levels will be summed up. Synchronizing these triggers will also take care of the following situation. Imagine your player stands directly in front of one enemy spider, which will trigger with a very high intensity, while another enemy spider is in range but far away, triggering with low intensity. So if both of these triggers fired individually, this would cause wide jumps of intensity and cause unpredictable results. So synchronizing helps us to either filter out those low-level triggers or to add them to a final sum. And for this sum, I can also define an upper limit. Let's set it to 90%, so we have still a reserve of 10% that we can keep for more drama during the boss fights. The last feature that I would like to add to our battle music is to immediately end the music as soon as a battle is over. For this, I will add another game node to my enemy spider. Let's call it stop music when destroyed. And the component we will be using this time is the one called psai stop music. And there I select that I wish to end the battle music with an end segment, and that I wish to wake up automatically again with the last basic mood. I also enable this checkbox here to prevent the stop command from firing as long as there are still action themes firing, which means that the battle is not over yet. Now the last step is to link the stop music command to the destruction of the enemy spider. In this case, this is also possible without scripting, as AngryBots already uses a simple signal mechanism that calls different other scripts on certain events. For instance, the health component of the enemy spider sends out die signals to a list of other components. So all we need to do is to add our own psai stop music command to that list and call its onSignal method. So much for integrating the general battle music for the scene. In the next video we will add interactive music to the boss battle. But now let's first take a look at our final result of the battle music. I thank you for watching so far. Hopefully see you in the next video. Bye bye.